You're listening to the Marilu Henner Show.
Well, you're in for a real treat because we have another episode of our Voice of the Future here at the Marilu Henner Show. I love taking young people, the people of the future that are going to really, set the standards for our teenagers and our kids and people in their early 20s, and really say, hey, I can do it, you can do it. We have a voice. We can have the experience. So you're going to meet a young award-winning filmmaker. I mean, not just an award-winning filmmaker, the Cannes Independent Film Fest award winner. And she's not afraid to tackle the tough topics. Her name's Cassie Jay. And, Cassie, your documentaries have garnered numerous awards, and we're thrilled to discuss what it's like to be behind the camera examining some of the hot button issues of today. So please welcome to the Marilu Henner Show.
Thank you. And actually, I hate to do this, but it's actually Cassie Jay.
Oh, Cassie Jay. What did I say?
Cassie, but I get that all the time.
Cassie. Oh, I'm so
Cassie,
sorry.
Yeah.
Cassie Jay. Yeah, I mean, so you've got a film called Daddy, I Do the Right to Love. And it won as I said, the best documentary at the 2010 Cannes Film Fest in France. And it examines examines abstinence-only sex education programs called Purity Balls. So can you just start from the beginning? I mean, it's so fascinating. It's funny. It's one of these things you hear on the periphery, and I've seen a couple of little things about it, but I don't think most of our listeners would know what that is. So explain what a purity ball is and what inspired you to create this film.
Okay, so a purity ball is actually a prom-like event between dads and their daughters. And girls as young as 6 years old will go and get dressed up all in a formal gown and get their hair and makeup done and go with their dad as their date to this banquet event. And the idea is that at this event, the daughters take a vow to remain abstinent until marriage, which means don't have sex until marriage. And the father...
But wait a second. Wait, let me stop you right there. You're saying kids as young as 6 years old, do they even know what that means? I mean, come on, that's crazy. 6 years old and they're saying, I'm going to be pure until marriage? Do they even know what what does that involve? How do you have that conversation?
Yeah, in my documentary, we actually asked some of the kids that went to these events why they chose to be abstinent, and they said, abstinent, what's that? So they aren't very aware of what's going on, but they take this vow and they sign a piece of paper, and they'll either get a purity ring to wear on their wedding ring finger until they get married, which is a sign to God that I took this vow and I'm going to keep it, or they get a white rose if they're younger girls and, maybe their hands grow too fast. But and then the father is taking this vow to act as the man in her life, to show her how she's supposed to be treated by a man. So there is this kind of under layer of a little creepiness, a little bit archaic.
Well, it's, the kids are never pre-sexual. I worked with a therapist for many, many years, and she always used to say, kids are never pre-sexual, so they know what's going on. But one of the hardest sort of bonds to break, and it usually ends up with somebody being very unhappy, is someone who is a real daddy's girl is never able to really find the right kind of mate because she's always comparing him to the idealized version of her dad. And, guys should go into the relationship just knowing there's going to be a script, that she should just write a script for you because you're never going to be able to come up with the right words. And there's something about interfering with a natural relationship between men and women if your father gets in there and becomes the man of your life. It is kind of weird.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's just so much pressure placed on your purity where actually recently, I think a few months ago, Elizabeth Smart, do you remember her? She was the 14-year-old girl that was abducted. So she was held by her captors for 9 months, I believe, and she was raised Mormon. And she just a few months ago in an interview said that partly why she didn't run away was because she was taught that your purity was your worth, and she was taught abstinence-only education in school to wait until marriage. And she actually brought up an example of the teacher saying that having sex before marriage is like being a piece of gum, and the more you're chewed up, why would anyone want a chewed up piece of gum, essentially?
Wow.
And so she said after the first time she was raped, she felt like she was worthless, and who would want her now?
Wow.
And very heartbreaking, yeah. So there are very deep-rooted issues that happen in the mind when you're taught this kind of education.
So what should kids be taught? I mean, what should the message be? You know, how are we failing in our sex education system right now for teenagers?
So the debate really is between abstinence-only education, which says wait until marriage and nothing else, and actually says that condoms and contraceptives don't work, so don't even try it. Abstinence is the only way. And then the opposite side of the coin is comprehensive sex education, which says it does talk about abstinence. If you want to wait until marriage, if that's what you believe in, do that. If you choose not to wait until marriage, which 95% of people don't wait until marriage to have sex, then here are the ways to protect yourself from STDs and unwanted pregnancy. And so the big debate is, should kids be learning this in schools, because you have, religious families that don't want their kids to be taught anything that's outside their moral code in their family, and parents can actually opt their children out of these kind of programs. And but currently, as sex education stands, what most schools talk about is puberty, HIV, the repercussions of teen pregnancy, and just a lot of kind of fear-based discussion. And very few schools talk about birth control, abortion options, sexual orientation, and even sexual abuse.
Do you think it's changing? I mean, in case you just joined us, we're talking to Cassie Jay, award-winning director and filmmaker of Daddy I Do, The Right to Love, and the upcoming The Red Pill, which I definitely want to talk to you about. But do you think that, do you think it's changing? Do you think it's getting better? I mean, with your film is a real eye-opener, because it does take it into this kind of psychosexual thing with your father. It's weird. I'm sorry. There's something very, if they did it with mothers and sons, people would be just as probably more.
They'd be mortified.
I think they'd be mortified. Boys would be mortified if I said, first of all, I would not want my sons, I have teenage boys, 18 and 19, every time they had any kind of contact with their girlfriends, I wouldn't want them to be thinking about their mother. I want my boys to have like a healthy, good relationship without my impinging on their experiences. And right. I think it's even sometimes worse for a dad.
There actually is a mother-son dance. It's called Nights to Remember, as in Knights in Shining Armor.
Oh, my gosh.
So there is that.
Now, are you seeing this in a certain, are you seeing it in certain parts of the country? I mean, what was it that, all right, so you did this film, and was it a call to arms for you because you were asked to have a code like this?
Yeah, I grew up in the abstinence programs, and I was a part of, if you've heard of either the Silver Ring Thing or True Love Waits, which is kind of a traveling band of kids talking about waiting until marriage, and then it's pulled away, then you put on a purity ring. And so it was very kind of trendy. I went to a Christian high school in Seattle, and so I did that, and I was a large supporter of it without knowing how it can affect kids later on. So I started making Daddy I Do when I was 21 years old, and it was really a journey of discovering it, basically questioning everything. And so that's what the film goes into.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, if you really believe it, a lot of times people wait for marriage, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. Listen, I don't take that away from anybody. Look at what just happened the other day on The Bachelor. He considered himself a born-again virgin, waited until he was married, and, hopefully they're having a great time on their honeymoon. But the thing is that it's when you involve the parents in this, that's when it gets a little weird for me. Just saying, it crosses a line as far as I'm concerned, and I think that definitely. But do you feel like that it had repercussions for you? I mean, once you did the film, you probably felt differently. But did you feel like you weren't able to have a healthy relationship with someone? In
all honesty, I actually feel like I've had a very healthy sexual life. But what I realized from making Daddy I Do was all these other areas that maybe are indirectly affected by sexual education. So, for instance, look at poverty. Okay, so we don't really think of that being linked to sexual education. But in my film, a statistic we show is in 2007, 37.3 million Americans were living below the poverty line, and more than half of those people were single mothers with children under the age of 6. So there is this huge issue of people having sexual lifestyles without knowing the responsibility or what can happen from their choices. So, Daddy, I do really.
So you're covering both sides. You're basically covering both sides. You're saying that, you know, the purity rings in the relationships with your dads and your moms, saving it for marriage, is one issue. But it's also we're not getting the proper sex education, so that we have all these teen pregnancies, all these moms. You know, 37.3 million people living below the poverty level, who are parents, etc. So it's like you're saying it's both sides. So sex education is failing us. Plus, I'm sure you know, and you've had experience lately with the whole hookup culture that kids are complaining about in colleges, where girls who had boyfriends in high school get to college and they now no longer have dates. They just have 3-month hookup situations with people. So our sex education is failing our kids. It's failing them.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't want to place it all on the sex education at schools either, because parents need to be involved. And,
absolutely.
And be an open ear and not judge their child. And definitely don't lie to your kid. I mean, I know a lot of people who had their parents say, oh, yeah, I waited until marriage and you better too. And the parents, in fact, did not. So I don't agree with parents lying about those things. They should share their knowledge. If they didn't wait until marriage and they feel like that was a bad thing, then talk about that. But, yeah, parents need to be involved, and the school needs to be involved. And if they aren't, then the only people they're going to be talking to are their peers, which aren't as educated, or pornography.
Yeah, or finding it online, because there's so much more available. See, I'm finding some of the kids are seeing so much younger and more innocent because they have been exposed to so much that it's almost like they put up a shield in a way to make sure that, you know, they've seen it all, done it all, whatever, or they've seen it being done on the Internet. So they almost want to protect themselves in some way. You know, I'm seeing fewer kids couple up, and they travel in packs more, which is probably why, you know, maybe because of social media, because of texting, they're not relating to each other in the same way that they used to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't know. I mean, so what's the hope? What can we do?
Well, so the abstinence programs, their big kind of fame in history was during the Bush administration. And then when Obama came into office in 2010, Obama has to vote to eliminate all the federal funding that was going towards abstinence-only programs, because between 96 and like 2008, 1.5 billion taxpayer dollars were going to abstinence-only programs. Mm-hmm. So Obama said, no, we need to have comprehensive. So he actually put in place 2 different educational programs for comprehensive. And then the Senate said, no, we still need abstinence. So there's still $50 million a year going towards abstinence-only programs. That actually shows that it rises teen pregnancy rates having abstinence-only education.
You think because it becomes like forbidden fruit, or because kids don't know what really is going on, and they, you know, I mean, if you're doing it to if you're getting kids on board at 6 years old and they don't even know what they're pledging their lives to, you know, I think it's got to be, it has to start with the parents, and there has to be some kind of discussion. There has to be an open forum, and I think that the schools have to provide information as well. I want to talk to you about your new film called The Red Pill, because we only have you for a little bit more. This examines men's rights movement, and what is that about?
So the men's rights movement, few people, not few, but I didn't know about this until last March. Do you remember the rape culture craze that was going on around the Steubenville case and, you know, the India rape? So I was looking into rape culture, and while Googling, I found this website called voiceformen.com. And basically, rape culture is the idea that rape is normalized and accepted, and victim blaming is a part of rape culture, where you're saying, well, what was she wearing? Was her skirt too short? What was she doing outside at night by herself?
Yeah, what's her responsibility? If she didn't come to the fraternity house and drink, then, you know, she wanted it. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's terrible.
Right. So avoiceformen.com was actually this website that had those exact talking points. What was she wearing? Why did she drink so much? And so it was the whole victim blaming culture. And I was fascinated by this, that there was this huge online community that believed this. So really just out of curiosity, I just started reading all of their articles and found out that they're a part of a larger movement called the men's rights movement. So the men's rights movement, it says that in fact, men are oppressed and discriminated against in societies worldwide, and that feminism relies on perpetuating the idea that women are victims and men are perpetrators, and in fact, that's not true, that men are actually victims. So I started to, I was very interested in this, and so I decided to contact every leader in the men's movement and interview them. Mm-hmm. And at first, I was pretty, had a shield up. I was a little skeptical about what they're doing, what they're talking about. And then through interviewing them, and I probably interviewed over 30 people by now, and I found that they actually do have some very good points. So I'll bring up one for you because I think it's an interesting.
Okay, great. We only have like 2 minutes, unfortunately. But go ahead. That's okay.
Well, so it looks like there's reproductive rights. So the men's rights movement says that they virtually have no rights, and the biggest argument is that if he would prefer an abortion and she decides to have the baby, now he's locked into 18 years of child support. And so they actually want to pass a law saying that the father, the biological father, can sign away his rights to the child where he doesn't have to pay child support because he would have preferred an abortion.
Yeah, so but what about the responsibility of taking responsibility for having sex with somebody that could get pregnant, and if you're not the one checking it out and making sure and everything else, or wearing a condom, or doing whatever you have to do to make sure that partner doesn't get pregnant,
What if the woman told him that she was using birth control pills and wasn't?
Slip it on. It doesn't matter. What about STDs? They should be wearing condoms anyway. These kids should be wearing condoms to make sure that they don't get pregnant, or they don't, especially somebody that they just met or somebody that they're just hooking up with. There's got to be some kind of responsibility.
This question.
Yeah, I know.
And there's no politician that's ever going to support that legislation. For the law that they're talking about, that a man can choose not to parent and not pay child support.
Oh,
no politician's ever going to vote for that.
Absolutely. We got a heated debate here at the end.
No, but it starts with the source. It starts with the act. Both people have to take responsibility for the act. That's why somebody who is completely drunk and out of it. Oh, you've got to come back. Cassie Jay, award-winning director and filmmaker, Daddy, I Do the Right to Love, and the upcoming The Red Pill. When your movie comes out, let's screen it and have a big discussion about it, because I'm so curious about all of it. And you're a great guest. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Our continuing discussion about airbrushing up next, the Lena Dunham issue.